Hey, it's Lou, and here's the thing. Our global food system is rotten. About 1/3 of all food grown is wasted or lost to things like spoilage. That's enough to feed nearly 2 billion people at a time when worldwide hunger is growing. The staggering inefficiency comes with major costs. We spend $1.2 trillion every year on food we do not eat, and the environment also pays a hefty price. Food waste has a larger carbon footprint than India or Russia. The area used to grow all that wasted food is about the size of Mexico. This is a high-stakes problem with plenty of blame to go around, plus a fair share of irony. But most importantly, how do we fix it? When food gets wasted, so does everything that went into it. The fertilizer, the pesticides, the water, the labor, the fossil fuels used to transport it, the electricity used to cool it, the plastic used to package it, and of course, the money you spend on it. So a piece of produce can travel the length of the globe through all these different middlemen just to be thrown in the trash. In fact, food waste is the single largest component going into municipal landfills in the US, which produce a staggering amount of methane gas. All told, lost or wasted food is responsible for 8.2% of greenhouse gas emissions. That's way more than aviation and just behind road transportation. In other words, the scope of the environmental impact is huge. So is the economic toll. The average American family of four spends $1,800 annually on food that goes uneaten. So how the hell did it get like this? Well, it's not necessarily because consumers are assholes. In fact, research out of the University of Manchester Sustainable Consumption Institute counterintuitively finds people with the very best food intentions often wind up creating the most waste. Quote, conventions generally seen as positive, cooking from fresh ingredients, the nuclear family meal, and eating with friends and extended family, give rise to surplus food which may become waste. This makes sense when you think about it. If you're cooking for a group like your immediate family, there's a good chance someone isn't going to like the food, especially bratty kids. Ditto with large groups of friends. But if you're cooking for yourself or just buying a single-serve takeout meal, you're going to pick out something you enjoy and you're going to understand the desired portion size. In terms of fresh ingredients, consider when you try a recipe that requires something like a teaspoon of parsley or half an onion or a pinch of some exotic spice you'll likely never use again. Supermarkets don't have those items available in small quantities, so you wind up with all this excess. Excess often becomes waste. Plus, fresh ingredients like fruits and vegetables rot quicker. No surprise then that they're the largest category of daily food waste. That means green-heavy diets, considered high quality from a nutritional standpoint, are actually pretty bad when it comes to waste. According to a recent study out of the Public Library of Science, the highest quality diet produces 535 grams of waste a day, while the lowest quality diet wastes just 295 grams a day. The problem is compounded from an environmental perspective since fruits and vegetables require a large amount of water and pesticides. The logical next step, it seems, would be to walk away from produce and start buying more processed food that remains edible for a longer period of time. But no serious thinker on this topic is suggesting that. Instead, these findings just underscore how layered and complicated the food waste issue is. That study I just mentioned concludes, realistically, it may not be possible to prioritize food waste avoidances in households with competing priorities. That's not to say we should ignore the issue. The stakes are way too high. So, as consumers, we can make small changes to fix things. First, we can challenge the cult of perfection. That is, if fruit is misshapen or vegetables are ugly, we tend not to buy them, and therefore grocery stores don't want to stock them. That's why some farmers let scarred or oddly formed crops die before they're even picked. But the thing is, looks can be deceiving. A lot of this stuff is perfectly edible. But we live in an Instagram world where pics of food are social currency. Millennials may not be able to afford traditional status symbols like luxury cars, but we can flaunt our lunches. However, if we didn't require all our ingredients to be picture perfect, then food waste would go down. Plus, you can sort of hide an ugly tomato in a nice sauce. Another culprit in the food waste landscape? food labels. One study found that food perceived to be out of date made up a fifth of all food thrown away by households in the UK. But a lot of that food was likely perfectly fine to eat. Brian Lipinski, an associate at the food program at the World Resource Institute, told me sell by, use by, etc. don't refer to whether or not the food could potentially cause illnesses. They're not expiration dates. Rather, they're a reference to quality and flavor. The sniff test and a good old visual inspection will probably keep you from eating anything bad. And frankly, a suboptimal peach isn't going to kill you. By the way, I know it's tempting to put unused food in the freezer, but that's often just the garbage pail's waiting room. We tend to put stuff there so that it rots out of sight. And when we empty it out, often months later, it doesn't feel like we're throwing away old food. It feels like we're getting rid of garbage. It assuages our guilt a little bit. And speaking of assuaging guilt, while composting is definitely better than sending unused food to a landfill and donating to a food bank is superior to throwing it in the dumpster, some people argue these well-intentioned measures simply divert food waste. We should focus on eliminating it, not redirecting it. When it comes to composting, for instance, food waste researcher Mourad points out that food is grown for humans, not worms. So composting, while mitigating some of the environmental damage for sure, isn't an ideal outcome. And a lot of the stuff given to food banks is impractical, like the flood of pumpkin pies after Thanksgiving. And besides, by the time you realize you're not going to use those blueberries you bought, it's probably too late to donate them. Okay, resetting here. So far, I've talked about the food waste issue from a consumer standpoint, what we can do better to fix the problem. But there's another school of thought. It's that customers are the scapegoats, and it should be on businesses and institutions to create a more sustainable system. After all, they're the ones profiting, and for decades, retailers have used advertising to promote overconsumption. It helps their bottom line. I'm always a bit cynical when it comes to businesses doing something that might eat into their profits, but Lipinski told me there's a business case for eliminating food loss and waste. In the UK, where the Love Food, Hate Waste campaign kicked off just over a decade ago, many customers prefer stores that make an effort to be sustainable. Sustainability helps build relationships with customers. And it's not like folks are buying less at the grocer and pocketing all the cash. Approximately 50% of household savings associated with the Love Food, Hate Waste campaign was spent at retail food stores, often on higher value foods that could have larger profit margins. This is called trading up. The economics of reducing waste at major offenders like hotels, sports stadiums, and restaurants are even more straightforward. When the food they offer is not sold, that's a bad outcome for business. So if they trim their menus, reduce the buffet offerings, and look for ingredient overlap in the meals they serve, then there's cost saving on multiple fronts, including labor and sanitation. Less food waste equals less garbage. Meanwhile, many colleges have eliminated trays in their cafeterias. Go ahead, eat all you want, but you gotta carry it. This behavioral nudge reduced food waste by 25 to 30% at some American universities. Look, subtle tricks like this can definitely curb waste, but the big challenge, the thing that will really reduce the 1.3 billion tons of annually wasted food in the world, is changing minds. Modern culture celebrates variety. Many of us enjoy cooking or ordering different types of ingredient-intensive cuisine every night. We want to be able to go out to dinner on a whim, even if there's a package of chicken that should be cooked sitting in the refrigerator. We associate abundance and choice with success and freedom. So I asked Dr. David Evans, the lead researcher associated with the University of Manchester study I mentioned earlier, if combating food waste means we have to give up variety. He told me it's politically very difficult to argue against choice. There are clear pleasures and benefits associated with it. But we might want to at least consider it if we're serious about creating more sustainable food systems. The good news is that this issue touches on so many important topics, so there can be a variety of different motivations to spur change. If you're not persuaded by the environmental argument, maybe you care about saving money. If you're a spendthrift, maybe you're interested in reducing hunger. Maybe you simply see this as a moral issue. After all, the Pope said wasting food is like stealing from the poor. And As Lipinski told me, most people experience visceral regret when they throw out good food. It's sort of ingrained in us. And now, thanks to an increase of research and media attention, we're starting to understand its impact beyond that gut reaction. So perhaps the tide is turning, and food waste is destined to go the way of the much maligned plastic straw. Okay, I'm gonna go live my life.